It's my birthday month, and in order to celebrate that, I'm going to be doing some fun things for the coming weeks. So, this is going to start it off by doing a real time drawing of a frog, this cute little tree frog, in two parts. If you want to see part two, make sure you're subscribed and come back next Tuesday to see part two. The swatches here that I posted on my page, the one that just said wrong pencil has been corrected in the one that you saw. So you'll have the right colors if you chose these. And hopefully you have your sketch done so you're ready to draw along with me. This drawing is based on this photo by William Warby from Unsplash, and I have actually painted him in a different view from the same photo shoot of this little froggo. And I really do love froggies. I'm using Prismacolor pencils on Stonehenge paper, and the paper has a lot of texture in it, which I love. But with when you're using Prismacolor pencils, they're softer than the polychromos that I used in the last piece that I did. That was also on Stonehenge. So you can kind of look at the two of them and see the difference. Here, the colors blend a lot better because they're softer, but you have to sharpen your pencil a lot. And something about pencil sharpeners that took me, I don't know, a ridiculous amount of time to understand is that pencil sharpeners lose their sharpness because it's just a blade. And once you use them for a gajillion times to sharpen something, the blade will eventually get wonky and it'll start eating your pencils. I'm like that right now with all of my little pencil sharpeners. So I feel like I should just get rid of them all and go buy some new ones so that I'll have something really sharp. But for now, got no budget for shopping, so I'm making do. I'm also using pencil extenders so I can use up some of my really small pencils. I usually, like when it starts getting really small, I switch over to a brand new one, and then I end up having a whole bunch of smalls at the same time. So trying to get through using some of them. And that on the back of that pencil is a pencil extender. So if you don't know what one is, you just put your pencil into it. There's a little band that you can move up and down, so it'll close in and hold your pencil in there. Now, coloring with this brand of pencils is different than the polychromos that I showed you last week. The polychromos are harder pencils and they stay sharp longer. And they also are, I guess both are really meant to blend in layers. I've always used them both with practically the same technique because I love to do really soft layers. I don't tend to press really hard because if I want to erase anything, whatever pencil brand I'm using, and I've pressed really hard, I've pressed it into the surface of the paper. So I'm not going to have any ability to lighten anything except by throwing some white on top of it, which makes everything kind of grayed out pastel-ish color. So I tend to just go very slowly like I'm doing. Bottom layers, I'll sometimes just kind of go across the shape. And then as I get more refined, I make sure the pencil's really sharp and I'll go in small circles. I'll do, whatever's going to fit in that space. So just because it doesn't have room for a full circle doesn't necessarily mean that I'll switch techniques, but I'm just going to try to squeeze everything in. Now I've got the yellow and the orange, and this is adding that brownish color again. And a lot of people will stop there or they'll go to a black. And as I said, black just becomes a dead color. And I try not to use it except in like really extreme dark circumstances. Now for the eye on this one, I may end up doing that eventually because the eye is black and there's a circle of black around the eye. But I thought I'm going to try using the same purple that I used on the other eye in order to make the dark shadow color. But before I did that, I just wanted to make sure I got my colors layered in, because once I put that purple in there, or if you're using a black, once you get the black in there, you could accidentally drag some of that color from the outside edge to the inside. So I also tend to try to start my drawings with my lighter colors, because once my lighter colors are in, then I'm going to be pretty safe from them, having any kind of drag from other colors or mushing anything around, that sort of thing. So went over it again with the yellow, went over it again with the orange. And then once I was pretty satisfied with it, I could start using a very sharp very tiny purple pencil. Creating the outlines for this is something that requires definitely having an actual really sharp pencil. And I'm looking carefully at the eye. If you zoom in on the eye, if you pull that up on your tablet or on your computer, then you'll see there's some broken places. And what I wanted to do was make it thicker where I see it's thicker, make it thinner where I see it's thinner, leave some openings for there's like a bare minimum white outline around it where the flesh starts and all that sort of thing. So when I work on a drawing like this, I zoom way in. So it's far bigger than what you see on your screen here. And what I'm looking for is the shapes of all of these shadow colors in the eye. Not looking to make everything absolutely 100% perfect, but making them close enough so that I can actually kind of get a feel for what the eye looks like. Most people will never notice whether you get it perfect or not. So, I just don't stress out about that kind of perfection. But I do want to make sure that I get it all layered well and then get something that looks like a rounded eye and looks like it has a few little highlights on it, that sort of thing. And most of the time, also, I revisit an area. I'll start working on something else and then let myself catch a glance at what I just finished just to see if it was good enough when I finished it. Because a lot of times you'll see something and suddenly realize, oh man, I needed more value there. I needed a punch of color there. Or if I start coloring the hands and the feet of this little guy and realize, oh, the orange that I'm using on that one needs to be stronger in the eye so they connect better. Or I need to make highlight shapes smaller or all those kind of things. So even though at the end of this, I'm going to call the head, neck, and arms done. And then in the second part of the video, we'll do the body and the stick. I tend to never think of any part of it as finished. But I do like to choose an area to start with that has some like really darks in it. So that's why I chose the eyes, because there are some really, really dark colors. And I wanted to make sure that I hit those so that I have something else to balance the rest of the drawing out at. Now, these little hands and feet, and I guess they're called hands and feet because I know they're called legs. Frogs have legs because I've seen them on menus. I don't know why people eat them, but okay. But these hands and feet are, kind of a glassy sort of orangey yellow color. And the highlights in them, though, are not white highlights. There's some lights. So what I'm doing is putting the orange in, leaving some yellow for the highlights. And as I get the darker colors put into the rest of the hands, then the lightness of the bright areas starts to show up. It just takes a while. And I know a lot of people don't have patience for as many layers as I put down, but I highly recommend it because it's going to give you the ability to make some changes as you go and, add in little tiny bits of extra darks here and there. And here I'm adding the part underneath of the arm, just a little bit of that because it gets darker under that hand. And then going on these, I guess they're frog fingers. Is that what you call frog fingers? I don't know. I should have looked it up. Sometimes I do that before I start. Maybe before part 2, I'll look up the names of the body parts and see how that goes. Anyway, putting in the darker brownish color. It's a reddish brown color. And by the way, if you wanted to use a different brand of pencil, and I don't have the pencil numbers here for you for your brand, you can just get the little swatches that I put in the post. And I've linked the post down below this video. So it's in a post here on YouTube. So you can just download that picture and then find colors of yours that match. So got the that brownish color in there and then went back to start adding a little more value into the yellow because it was just not feeling kind of juicy and yellow enough and it wasn't leaving the highlights. But the more layers you put on, the more you're able to fill in all those little white places in between each of the spots of color. And that's what makes it smooth. Now, a lot of people will use blending solution to just kind of mush all the color together and fill in those white places. Totally fine to do that. It's just not a technique that I enjoy. because it flattens out all the texture of the paper, which is one of the things I really love about working with colored pencils. I love the texture. So I went back to using orange again, brightening up and intensifying that orange color because I'm hoping I can get the fingers to feel like they're kind of glowing by the time it's all said and done, like they are in the photograph. Um, I'm also going to be looking up more fun facts about this Froggo when I put up part 2, because right now I don't have anything other to share about him. And I usually do like to share some little naturalist types of tips. I'm not a naturalist, I'm not a science person, but I do love to learn things. And when I start drawing something like this, I'll go look up what is the animal, what's its habitat, is it endangered, are there any crazy things that it does at night, what are its crazy mating rituals, all that kind of stuff. So we'll see what I find. And if you know of any fun facts about this particular tree frog, be sure you let me know in a comment and I'll include it in the next video. But then also, one of the other reasons that I love this tree frog picture is that we actually have tree frogs where I live. And for the longest time, I thought they were just frogs that were in the forest. I walk with my dogs, and I've been hearing lately just a ton of frogs. And I did not know we had a Pacific tree frog where I live, and that is the frog. I ended up sketching him in my nature journaling sketchbook. It was so much fun. It's not a cool looking frog like this. It's kind of a blah looking frog, but it was kind of nice to find out what it is that I keep hearing every time I heard the little chirping of the frogs. Because I didn't know they were tree frogs. I just thought they were regular old, like, I don't know, toads or something in the forest near my house. Haven't seen any in my yard or anything because I don't have much growing, shall we say, in my yard. Anyway, that lip that he's got going across there, I put some yellow ochre color in it. It's a more muted kind of yellow, so it wouldn't be as bright as everything else. You can add some brighter yellow to it if you want. I do add a little bit of it later. And then just started working on the green. And here I'm leaving more white than I did when I created the yellow, because I want to add a yellow to this so it gets even brighter than this green pencil, which means I need to leave some white space for the yellow to sit on, because if the yellow just covers up the green, it will transform it into a more yellow-green color, but it's not going to make it look as bright. You'll see what I mean when we get to that point. And around the back side of this guy, I did kind of struggle with it a little bit around the back side of the head behind the eye. These frogs usually have a disc on them, if you've ever drawn frogs. And I think that's what we're seeing just a portion of in this frog. So you'll see me fussing with it and fighting with it. But they also have little nostrils. So make sure you get the shape of the nose up there in the top. Here's where I switch to the yellow color, because this is going to give me a little brighter yellow-green. It's going to feel like a definite yellow-green kind of color. And then I can go back over that also with greens. Sometimes I sandwich the color that I'm doing a glaze with, and glazing I know is a watercolor term, but you can do that with any other medium as well. Just add a light wash of whatever that color is over the top, and then go back in with more of the green, and you'll start getting a really interesting mix of colors. And if you do your shading as you do that, then it'll build up with all those colors in it. So I got the top part of the Froggo all brightened with that yellow, and even added, since I had the yellow pencil in my hand, added a little bit of it to the yellow along the mouth. And I started seeing, as I zoomed in, I started seeing more bluish kind of color in the back. And this is where I started messing with trying to figure out what that shape is. I overdid it a little bit, and overdoing it is something that I do all the time. I start thinking in my head because I saw that little shape and I said, oh, that's the disc on the side of the head. And then I end up drawing it in the way that my head thinks that it should be. And I stop looking for a second at the picture to see what it really looks like. So part of, making any kind of art is getting yourself back to looking at the reference and noticing when you start drawing out of your brain. Now, unless your brain is really good and you've, really drawn something enough times that you really know what you're doing. And when it comes to frogs, I haven't drawn that many frogs. Then it can be dangerous. It can pull you into, well, I'm going to draw this shape. But for me, it's when I'm using these really light layers that I can go back in and start to deepen an area. I can change what's there. I can change that shape if I've drawn it incorrectly. And I have room to move. If you go in with the heavy pencil right away, then you can't erase that. You can't lift that off very easily. I mean, you can do some of that, but once you start pressing it into the paper, you get rid of that texture. So you're smushing the peaks and valleys of the paper down, and you're also smushing the pencil into it. All of that wax is getting in there. And with Prismacolor pencils, if you're using them like I am here, Prismacolor pencils have a tendency to do this thing called wax bloom. And wax bloom is where after it sits for a while, you'll notice it almost has a cloudy film over it if you go back and look at it a while later. And you can buff that off, but you don't get that kind of a weird waxy surface if you just take your time and do really light layers. It's when it starts getting really dense and the pigment is just kind of puddled on the paper. That's when it starts getting very waxy. So I try not to ever get too much of my drawings into that super, super dense kind of pigmentation, unless I'm prepared to make sure I go back and buff that out with a towel. It's most difficult for me on something like this because if I'm buffing it out, then I am often going to be smushing the pencil across the page. And when it's got a white background, that's definitely not fun. So sometimes I'll put a paper mask over it so that I wouldn't end up, getting any pigment all over the place. But you can see I just go back and forth with the different colors to try to start to get the kind of color I'm looking for. And it's not always going to be exactly the color in my reference photo. A lot of times I look for ways that I can enhance a photo even more than what I see. Sometimes in a photo you get, blemishes on the animal and you can actually help them go away. And here I was trying to put a little texture in there because I wanted it to feel a little bit like his skin had those little kind of dots on it. So I put a whole bunch of like C shapes and I did it very, very lightly because I wasn't sure if it was going to look very good. And what that left me able to do is to go back in with the lighter green pencil later and really deepen that whole area so that I then was able to soften it because those got like to be really harsh looking. Now that area on the left side, remember when I said I saw some blue in it? One of the things that a white pencil can do, and I don't use this trick very often, but it will pastelize a color that you've already got down. So if you're looking for something that's like a super pastel-y color that looks almost chalky, like these fingers um, look all kind of glassine, then sometimes going over it will make them, blend and you're risking the wax bloom at that point, but they will sometimes make it look a little bit glassy. And on that left side, it brought out the blue in the greens because white on top of another color changes it in different ways and depends on the medium you're using it on top of and which of the green pencils or whatever color pencils. I've had some of them where it just totally changes the color to something else when you add white to it. Just like with acrylic or gouache or something, when you add white, you need to test it out because sometimes it'll do really strange things. So moving on, I know I'm still on the green. It's taken me a while. This is, not a process that's meant to be fast. It's just a process. That dust brush that I just cleaned off the page with, that is a brush that I have had back since the days I was in college, believe it or not. Very, very, very long time ago. And it still works. It's kind of cool that I still have some of the remnants of my college days. But what that does when you've got dust on your paper, from working with pencils, instead of brushing it with your hand where you might drag that pigment across the page, the really soft surface of those hairs, it does something. Somehow it lifts the pigment instead of smushing it down into the paper. It helps you to just kind of brush it away and lift it off, and it'll help you to not have to erase any mess that gets created underneath of it. So for the area under the chin, I debated whether to go with a gray first and realized I didn't want to deaden him with a gray. So on this top portion, I'm going to be using some purples and a little bit of, potentially a little yellow will go in there. The tummy is going to have more, yellow and brown in it, but it's also going to have purple and the inside of the legs at the bottom. Because I saw much more purple down there. So I wanted to bring the purple in above. But one of the problems is if you don't have a super pastel pencil, and this is a light pencil, it's just not super, super light, then you end up with something that you're not going to be able to blend. Like you can't, if you start pressing harder with it to get enough pencil into the nooks and crannies of the paper, you could end up in trouble because then it's going to get darker and darker and darker and darker. So what I decided to do was to draw it as though the color were this dark and then erase it. Now, if you've ever tried erasing a really light layer of pencil, then you'll get most of it off and it leaves very, very small dots behind on the paper. And that means you can either go back in and fill some of them in. If you want to use a white pencil with it, then you can kind of make that area into a pastel looking color. But it gets rid of, when you have just one layer of this kind of a color, it can look just really messy. And this was something my graphic design professor, who was also my illustration professor, we had a very small college. A lot of teachers were doing double duty. And she taught me her method for using pencils. And she would just erase things in order to get lights and let that pencil just get softer and softer. And it almost ends up looking blended if you do it right. It takes a little practice to do. But I also wanted to make it a little bit more gray. Not a ton, but now I have the gray and the purple working together. So I'm layering them. So now I can get a little more specific with the shapes of the shadows and also, drawing around some of there's little white dots and things on the texture of the underside of the chin. Now you could definitely smooth that whole thing out and not worry about any texture, because in colored pencil on a drawing this small, because this is I think it's a 6x6, 7x7 sketchbook. No, it's 8x8. Sorry, my brain misspoke. The drawing is about 5x5. So when I did that, I had drawn a box that was, I think, 5x5 to put it in. Anyway, I ended up adding more of this gray to it because it's so small. If I were doing a larger drawing, I could really get into the texture and spend hours and hours and hours doing his chinny chin chin. But it's in a sketchbook, so it's not going to end up that way. But it is going to go to a very special person who is one of my atelier members over on Substack. My atelier members are the paid subscribers over there, and you can subscribe there without paying. It's definitely free. But if you'd like to do, a live stream or something, come to one of those. My next live stream, I think, is going to be in colored pencil. By the time I'm making this video live, I'll know whether it's colored pencil. So I will put the date and stuff on Substack. So if you want to join, even just for a month, you could join just for a month to do a color pencil drawing with me in a live stream on Substack. But you can certainly also join Substack and just go read all the posts and see all the drawings and all the art without doing any of that. And it won't cost you anything to do. And it's a great way to keep in touch with me because I put out my videos on Tuesdays and Saturdays. And if you're a subscriber, gosh, I can't talk, then you'll get an email from me saying there's a new video up and it'll tell you where. So you'll be able to not miss out. And there's also an option if you don't like getting a lot of email. And I have a project I'm working on. It's turned into a massive project. It's going to be much bigger than I ever planned. Oh my goodness. But this other project is going to actually explain more about what's where and what I'm posting on this site versus that site, etc. But anyway, this drawing is going to go to someone special among the Atelier members. And then let's see, what else was I going to say? I can't remember. The live stream is going to be coming up, I believe, this coming weekend. So if you're watching this at the very beginning of March, then you'll know that you'll have just a couple days to go get signed up if you want to come to the live stream. Because you can also ask questions. I will be posting a reference picture for whatever it is that I'll be working on, and you can draw along with me. Those live streams are set for an hour, but I go until I'm done. So you can leave if you get bored with me. So the arm here has yellow on the bottom, more of a yellowish color, and highlight on the top. And the shadow color, which is more of a dark mid-tone, is in the center. And that's because of the bounce light that we talked about in my last video when I did the carrots. So you'll be able to learn about it on the carrots page too, or on the carrots video. Because there are sometimes when the light is definitely coming from the sky, but here the light is also, you can see it hitting the toes and then bouncing upwards. So that's where that yellow is coming from. So, if you can capture that light being kind of bounced around on whatever that is that you're drawing, you can really convince somebody of the reality of it, even if they don't know that you've done that. Most people won't see it in your drawing, but they'll be amazed by it because you've captured something that they see around them all day long. Because if you look carefully, you'll see it everywhere. So I'm going to add a little bit of white to try to brighten up the light from the top, because that's also a little duller of a green color. So I'm going to try to see if I can brighten that. And I suddenly realized as I was kind of darkening this arm that I had screwed up in my original drawing of the shape of the elbow. Look how wrong that is. And I'm sure no one else will care. It's just a frog arm, so what does it matter? But I will fix it, don't worry. But a lot of times, my original sketch, I think I got it right, and it's not until I start looking at it, trying to put in details, that I start capturing, oh, I see what that is. Because I start looking at more and more details in close up. So this is where I've been adding the purple. I added it in the wrinkles on the wrist do frogs have wrists? I guess if they have hands and arms, they must have wrists. But he's got some little wrists there. He's got little pock marks here and there. I don't know if it's dirt or spots, either one. But all of a sudden, putting in that dark purple creates a really good separation between the arm and the body. So here's where I started trying to erase the pencil line so I could start fixing it and getting the shape better, because it's sort of a bulbous elbow and then comes up and then goes back down again. And I'm just a stickler for trying to get my anatomy correct, even if I'm not really good at doing it all the time. But look how cute this is. I was looking at the comparison of the value on the arm versus the value on the back of the eye, and I think I may have to add some more to the back of the head. And some of that might come in the second part of the drawing, because I'm going to go through everything again and compare all my values and see, what looks right, what doesn't look right. And here I wanted to add just a little bit darker to the center where that shadow is. And then for this other arm, I'm going to use the trick with the white pencil again. So I'm going to put in a very light coat for this very soft kind of green color, and then put the white over it, which will lighten it further. And then I can put the darker colors underneath of it for the bottom part of the arm, and doing that in the purple. So the purple, I am also going to have to go back through. I think I'm going to add some like yellow ochre to it eventually, but I want to get the belly and the bottom of the leg or inside of the legs done first, and then be able to do all that at the same time, because I want to kind of do it in the same sort of way. But I did try a little of the yellow ochre right here, and that's where I got the clue that that's probably going to work for me pretty well. So that is the first half of the drawing. And I hope you drew along with me. If you want to send a WIP, a work in progress, WIP, I would love to see yours, how it's going so far. And then next week we will come back and finish it all up. So I will see you here in a week on Tuesday. If you've got any questions or if you got any tree frog facts, drop them in the comments and let me know if you're going to come back and finish the drawing with me next week. I'll see you then. Bye-bye.